Good afternoon. I hope everyone is staying safe out there as we march onward with week 3 of the SPL. Finch and Gormizer here on the analyst desk. I guess you can call him desk. We don't have a desk anymore. And Gore, the one word that I think of when I think of Season 7 is competitive, man. It feels like anybody can win. Any team can win at any given moment.
Yeah, it's been ridiculous so far when you're looking at the way things have been going. There's only one team right now still looking for that first one, that is Obey. So, hey, they have their chance today. But
That's
the
right.
fact that you could look at, later on, Renegades and Sanguine and be like, well, anybody could win that one. You look at yesterday and you're like, Sanguine Rival, anyone could win that one. PK and SSG, anyone could win those. Like, the way these games have been going, it's very difficult to make a call going into the set. Who's going to win? And that makes it just so much more interesting, especially when you're like, oh yeah, maybe yesterday you were looking at it and said, Knights have this, no problem. It's nice being wrong in those cases, at least in my eyes, because it keeps things fresh, keeps things interesting, and it's making Season 7 something different.
Yeah, I kind of have to say it this way, but I'm glad that my predictions are not always correct. See how I'm able to cover myself and also enjoy how competitive the SPL is all at once. And I think that what's really interesting here, Gormizer, is that coming into this one, both of these teams have kind of had weird paths towards getting here, right? eUnited defeated Rival. They were my #1 seed kind of coming into the year. I think that they're a really strong team to look at, but then they lost to Radiance and they lost to Renegades. And for Obey, right, they've lost, but they've lost to some really good teams. They lost to Sanguine, to the Knights, to Radiance. So it's like, I don't know how much you can hold that against them either. I think with eUnited in particular, though, here, Gormizer, and I really want to focus in on Scream in the jungle here for this roster. It's just variety. Scream is the kind of man, and I don't mean variety of the soul inner, Scream is the kind of dude who will play whatever it is that he wants to in the jungle. He'll take whatever pick that he thinks is good, and then he will beat you with it.
And that's the best thing about it. One of the things that we've noticed, specifically in a lot of these last few weeks, but a couple of jungle picks that have maybe gotten to shine a little brighter than everything else, but being able to have that, variety is the spice of life. Bringing in a very wide god pool makes you not only better for anyone, but better for your team, better for setups, better for ganks, and better for team fights, right? When it comes around, I expect to see a lot out of Scream, specifically as he's making rotations throughout it, and it's also going to maybe help kind of keep Weekend in check. If Scream gets ahead and starts getting aggressive, then Obey, that's a big counterpoint. Like, if Weekend is not able to get his buffs, get his farm, we've seen, at least in all 3 of their sets so far, the jungle be a point of contention where Weekend has fallen behind, and Scream can abuse that.
And I think that what's really important here, Gormizer, is that you really... is that Weekend has been slow to start, right? And what I mean by slow to start is that he likes to wait on the sideline, kind of. He doesn't always get in aggressive right from minute 1. I think if Scream can disrupt that rhythm, that'll make life really, really tough here for Obey in particular. But we've been talking all this time about Scream. I think it's time to hear from the man himself. Scream standing by for the interview.
All right, joined by Scream, jungler for eUnited. Scream, obviously not the week that you guys wanted last week. What's the team's mindset trying to bounce back from that tough 0-2 loss in both games last week?
Well, we're not too upset about the Radiance games because we were down. We had a really big deficit in game 1, and we came back and played hard in the first and the second game, and we were in position to win both those games. The Renegades games are actually generally worse for us because the first game was fine, but then the second game, we kind of just got rolled over. And it happens. It's the first few sets of the season. They don't really matter a whole lot, but we still have to improve from them and get better.
Now you've got Obey Alliance, a team that has been struggling so far. Is this the type of team you want to play when you're trying to bounce back from a couple tough losses, or do you want to try and get the ball rolling against one of the higher tier teams? Is that a concern for you at all here?
For me personally, I pref playing one of the higher teams because I think that we have the ability to beat them, and I think that beating a top tier team is definitely better for morale, and it helps you you learn a lot more from the games generally. But I don't think Obey is going to be a pushover. I mean, I still think that if you mess up versus Obey, they can take games off you. That pretty much goes for everyone in the league. But yeah, I just pref a higher team personally.
Scream, have you been playing to where you thought you would up until this point? I mean, obviously you're the GOAT, right? I mean, that's the bit, right? Hey, it's the GOAT coming into the jungle. But is this where you expected to be so far this season?
Like for me, I think that I should be playing better. I haven't really been playing to my expected standard, I feel like. I think that might have a little bit to do with new year and new meta, new teammates. I think it all like, it's like they're all factors in it, but I just expect more of myself personally, and I'm trying to pick it up lately. So
Well, we'll see if you can do that today. Scream, good luck up against Obey and into the rest of the United as well. And we'll be seeing you soon. Thanks for stopping by.
thank you.
Well, if Scream doesn't think he's played up to his potential yet, that might be trouble for Weekend and the boys of Obey. And I really do think that their matchup against Scream, and really that whole 3v3 in particular, it's what's going to be important here in this one, Gormizer, because I really don't think that the 3v3 from this team has been up to the level that I would have expected. I'm talking about Inbound, Wlfy, and Weekend on the side of Obey. I think that Weekend's been too passive, Inbound has been too aggressive, and Wlfy has been on kind of some odd picks here too. What's your read on the current strength of this 3v3 for Obey?
Well, it's really weird because early on in the season, talking to Obey, they said they kind of wanted to play through Wlfy, right? Like they wanted him to be the front and center for the team. And like you said, some weird picks that have come through. Some that I would even argue are more utility picks. Things like a new Wah, I think in week 1 that we got to see, like where it's just like, okay, that's not exactly where I'd put someone if I wanted them to carry. It's definitely going to help. And that's where the dynamic, I think, has shifted, at least in my mind. Obey, their 3v3, their mid-fight isn't where they're strongest. It is those side lanes. It is like Wowy and Ducky being able to kind of lead it. Inbound, when he's over on the side with Wowy, has been playing aggressive. Sometimes, like you said, maybe a little too aggressive. But in a lot of these instances, it can give them a lot of potential for kills. If you get Wowy ahead, or if you can get Ducky ahead, depending on which side of the map you're looking at, those side lanes can start to dominate and maybe assist that 3v3 in mid, kind of come in, get Wlfy ahead, and then the entire team just starts rolling.
I agree that that Wowy and Ducky have looked like the shining stars, but that's only because the 3v3 just kind of has struggled. I think that if they can get off to even a bit more of an even start there in that 3v3, not only are they giving Wowy and Ducky a better chance to potentially be carriers, but then we can start to see some of that carry potential that we know that Wlfy has. I think people forget how dominant that rival team he was a part of for 2 years really was across a long stretch, and Wlfy was a huge part of that. This man is obviously a top-tier SMITE talent. I think that any of the Obey guys would tell you themselves they have not quite played at the level they know they're capable of. I don't think the squad's maxed out. I think we're seeing 60% right now, and this squad has a lot more top end to show us. That's why I'm excited for this match here, man. I think that Obey really could turn some heads.
And I'm really curious to see how they tackle today specifically. When they were playing against Radiance last week, they were the top 3 for both of their games. They went for the Jormungandr, the Raijin, and the Huyi. All things that we've seen be incredibly potent and powerful for them in the past. But, if I'm looking at it, it hasn't been enough on their own. And it gets them, the essentials, right? You get your solo lane, you have Ducky on something he's comfortable on, you get Wowy on something he's comfortable on, and you have Wlfy on that Raijin that we've seen being at least a high pick lately and high potential for a carry if he gets rolling forward. But I'm wondering, where their brain is going to go for this one, right? Are they going to look at the Merlin that we've seen be so powerful and show so much prowess for a lot of these other teams?
Yeah, man, I think if Merlin's open, I think I want Merlin. But here's another god that's been really strong right now, and that is Ullr. And for me, I really do see this in the hands of Snoopy, right? I don't know that we necessarily see Hurriwind do that much Hunter mid, but if Snoopy gets this pick, I wrote this down in my notes here already. Both of these teams are kind of scrappy teams. That's why I think Obey has a chance. They like to take fights, especially Snoopy and Scream. And this Ullr says that to me. This could potentially be trouble for Wowy if he picks something more passive like a Jingwei. He's got to make sure that he gives himself some strong tools. But Gore, these first 3 picks might be trouble, man. Ullr's good. I don't know if he's Merlin Yemoja good.
And it's been a while. Yemoja's like on that pinpoint, right? Where it's just like, okay, yes, she's been nerfed in her scaling of all things. There's a little bit of the stun nerf that came through, but healing and shielding is still really potent and really solid. And I think what she's going to be able to bring to the team, along with the fact that we already see lifesteal playing a pretty big role, especially for like the carries, it's just going to force eUnited to go for that anti-heal almost as soon as possible. I'm like, Divine Ruins, I need Brawlers, I need Onks later in the game. Like, I need something to help shut her down, because I feel like if this Yemoja can get off onto a ramp, and not the same ramp that Inbound is usually looking for, but just onto a ramp of comfortable support play, then she's going to be almost unmanageable.
Well, the Baron Samedi gets locked in for eUnited. This is a bit of a different pick, Gormizer. We said that back at the top of the show, didn't we, that eUnited like to kind of draft their own picks. I'm wondering if this is going into the solo lane. They already have the Hobwa that could be mid or jungle, so I got to think Baron likely at this point going into the solo lane. And Baron can do well there. I think if he catches you off guard, he can do a lot of surprise damage. His team fight presence isn't bad either. Do you like the Baron pick here?
It's not something that I think is the same level, but it is something that we got to see in the Challenger Circuit. I think in the qualifiers where there were a couple teams who were pulling out that Baron Samedi over in the solo lane, and it brings a different play style to the solo lane because you still you want to build him bruisery, but he doesn't build bruisery the same way a lot of warriors do, but his clear is still that of a mage, right? So he's still going to be able to melt you. He's got a lot of sustain for himself as well as clear. But the main thing I always look at, and it's going to be how he translates for ganks, and it's his ult. And that is going to be incredibly powerful for solo kills, for 2-on-1 fights. It can keep him alive and keep him safe, and it could also turn things over in his favor.
Yeah, and sometimes Flicker doesn't quite feel like enough to get away from that life of the party from Baron, right? So I think that Merlin could potentially be in some trouble depending on that ability. It's the same for Yemoja. If she's not able to kind of bounce her way out of there, then she's a bit of a sitting duck too. So this Baron might be able to do well here this game. They'll add an Anhur to the mix. I got to think that's for Wlfy, and certainly can stand toe-to-toe with that Ullr. I expect some fireworks over there.
I want a Wheelish right now. There's already too much on the table to potentially go into that jungle, but I mean, you've got Yemoja who's going to be able to, you could utilize your ult against the same thing for Batz and Anhur. I mean, that's just a really good pick, I think, that could come into this, but you've already got the Hobwa, you've already got everything else on your team. It's so difficult to try and get all of these counter picks, but I like what eUnited have gone for. It's just a little squishy on paper, right? I mean, it's not going to be the tankiest team in the world. So I think Obey, especially early on, Batz and Anhur, in my eyes, with their passives, can absolutely abuse how untanky eUnited will be and try to get a lot of early kills.
But you can see the mentality, right? If they're going to run a double hunter composition, that's why you put Baron in the solo lane to try and make up potentially for some of the magic damage you're losing, especially with a warrior support as well with this Horus. So I like the way that eUnited have put this composition together. It's clearly well thought out here, Gormizer. Game number 1, Obey in search of that first win about to start.
Thank you, Finch. Thank you, Gormizer. It is certainly a bounce-back opportunity here for both of these teams. Dolson and Aggro on the call for set number 1. And I'll admit, Aggro, I mean, I'm watching what Obey have drafted. We talk about how the solo lane and the long lane for them, Ducky, Wowy, have been maybe bright spots, and the reason for that may be up for some debate. But I'm not sure how I feel about the Wukong being handed over to Ducky. I don't know if that's going to bring the power that they may need there in that short lane.
I think that Ducky just wanted to make sure he was on a warrior that isn't susceptible to getting life of the party really early on in this lane. As soon as you hit level 5 as Baron, if the enemy solo laner doesn't have a CC immune ult, it's really, really easy to just pull him under tower and get a solo kill or call your jungler over and make sure you get a kill. Wukong has enough bully potential. Baron's really not going to be able to poke you out too heavily. Depending on how Variety wants to play this early game, I'd expect him to play it a little bit slower and just try and clear out some of these waves. I think that Wukong is the exact type of annoying that can deal with double Hunter, which we have here for eUnited.
And I like eUnited now starting to pivot over into this kind of Horus meta that we started to see. Sanguine has obviously worked with this Horus and made it look good, fell a couple of times in their matchup yesterday. But you can tell a lot of teams really have started to put in work on this god in early aggression already in this long lane. Eonic running the blink. He's going to blink in early and often. I think you do have to be careful here if you're Obey. I mean, they have plenty of counter engage, I think, with the Yemoja and then a potential jump backwards from Wowy. But the kill potential certainly there, and they're going to look for it as Wowy will jump back beneath his tier 1 tower, so no kill just yet. They do have some lane pressure as Scream is just around that purple.
And this is exactly what you want to do with that Horus in lane. And I think that when you think about gods that will see play at a competitive level, one of the big keys to it is actually Scream in some trouble here. Weaken's already jumped on him and slowed him down.
He has to burn the beads, but it's not going to save his life. Weaken in for first blood. Wlfy gets some body block assist from Weaken, but Hurriwind immediately answers back. So first blood for Obey. That's a kill for United. Weekend actually very low here. Luckily has the leap and had just enough mana for it. So Hurriwind answers back with a kill of his own.
Really good pathing there by Weekend. Just didn't show himself to Scream. Scream thought he was all alone right there and didn't look like he had the water carpet available and put 2 points in the water cannon, which is very common for Hebo, whether he's in jungle or in the mid lane, to not put a point in your 2 at this point in the game. So that slow can really be deadly, and Wlfy all in commits, loses his life for it, but certainly worth Obey's time as they got the first blood bounty. But going back to what I was saying about Horus, I think that one of the things that when you look at a character and why or if they'll be paid at the highest level, the ability to do something that no other character in the game does is a huge boon for that character, right? I mean, that's the reason why Giannis, despite having horrible stats for so many different levels of play, including the SPL, is still so attractive to top-level players, is because no other character gets you out of situations like Giannis does, or moves you around the map like Giannis does, and that's really attractive. And Horus ult is very much the same. No other ultimate provides that level of backline dive instantly.
We'll talk about dive. Scream catches a Fear No Evil straight to the jaw and is able to make his way back beneath the tier 1 tower alive. So aggression from Weekend. Aggro, I feel like this is kind of a different look. I mean, Weekend had been slow playing some of these games maybe throughout the first couple of weeks, but he's already found first blood in this game and looking for more onto Scream.
And I love it. This is what Obey should be doing at all times, it feels like, is just going for these early game pressure compositions. And I think Hunbatz fits that really well. Weekend has looked good so far. He's picked 2 good fights. The fact that they don't kill Scream there is a disappointment for sure, knowing that he has no purification beads. But Wlfy didn't have the 2 off cooldown, it looked like, at the time. Maybe that he didn't want to just get close enough to make sure he didn't get hit by that crushing wave. But it still puts pressure on Scream, still forces him to use his ultimate defensively. This is, and you'd much rather see your jungler be proactive than try and just wait around and wait for the right opportunity to come to them.
And this is something I did want to revisit, the second purple buff of the game stolen away by eUnited, and I was curious if Obey was maybe even going to be able to get themselves one here in this early game, and for the moment they have forced eUnited's duo lane back and look to confirm the first purple buff. There is a stun down. Wowy might trade his life for it though. So going to leap away and stay alive here, but you're playing with fire there as another purple buff drops to the ground. It looks like Eonic was able to pick it up.
And it's just such great pressure on this left-hand side. So much of the meta these days, in my mind, has been centered around how well your duo lane pressures and how well your 2v2 fights against the enemy 2v2. And I think that's a reason why Yemoja is starting to see a little bit less heavy prioritization, because her 2v2 can be really good, but if she falls behind, it gets a little bit difficult to step up and just chain stun, because they just will ignore your stunning and kind of run at you that entire time. She's good for her sustain, and that's where she's been really solid here for Inbound and Wowy. But as good as Yemoja is at level 1, as soon as Eonic and Snoopy hit level 2, they just have such better all-in potential that makes it really difficult to really fight into, and they've leveraged that very well. Snoopy hasn't even backed yet, so he's going to back and be able to grab a full set of Devos and probably boots 1. He might be able to even go full boots here if that's what he wants to do, instead of starting to stack it up, knowing that Wowy has gone with the slower Devourer's Gauntlet start. Wonder where Snoopy's going to go. I think that either way is fine here.
And I think that's got to be a small win here for eUnited, where I think Weekend, again, we sort of touched on it. I think a different look from Obey here in this early game, where they've tried to be aggressive early and often. But at some point, you know, maybe you're concerned by the way that this long lane is going. I don't think they've gotten a single purple buff after maybe even just the first one. It's been Eonic, Snoopy through and through here, and now you're going to bring that presence over here to the middle lane, maybe leave Wowy alone, and maybe that's where you look for Inbound to find some pressure now. Just rotate out of that long lane if you're not going to be able to do much when you're there with Wowy.
Yeah, I think that that's going to be the key here for Obey, is using their great team fight that they have. And it's all going to be centered around this Yemoja and the Hunbatz and how effective those two ultimates can be in this game. And I'm looking for Inbound to really focus trapping Scream and Variety into those ults. If you get Hurriwind with his jump down or Snoopy with his jump down, that's going to be good. But this Baron's going to be critical to the team fight for eUnited.
Inbound dashed on, and Stunbreaker will crash down and inbound back to base. That's a first kill for this long lane. Snoopy catches Desert Fury. Wowy just needs a few more autos, but Eonic, brilliant body blocks here. Wowy just trying to round the corner, finds the spear. Snoopy takes a back seat, but Hurriwind is here. It's a 2-for-1 trade with eUnited out on top.
Wowy has never been happier about a change to a character than Impale making that you still do damage all the way through, because Eonic was doing way too well with those body blocks, and at least Snoopy buys enough time to make sure that Hurriwind can rotate over and get that return kill and make it a 2-for-1. But that was a sick play by Wowy, because I think he actually interrupted the ricochet coming from Snoopy that would have all-in and killed Inbound instantly. Because that pillar came up, it stopped the ricochet, and he found a great impale on the top end. So not only did he force the beads out from Snoopy, forces him to dash in an awkward way later on, but it keeps Inbound alive a little bit longer, keeps Eonic away from the 1v1 that the Hunters are going to have after the fact, and his Desert Fury was pretty accurate afterwards as well. So that, despite going 2-for-1 in United's favor, Wowy played that very, very well.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree, and I think that given how this early game has been in this long lane, I think Wowy maybe takes that as a small win for himself. You do have to be concerned, though, I think, if you're Obey, at where Hurriwind has been able to rotate through here. Wlfy has an assist on the board, and maybe we'll catch a death here as Eonic, now starting to rotate out of the long lane, is going to find some pressure there. But a kill onto Wowy, I think, is maybe a win here, depending on how that gank could have gone worse. But when you look at Hurriwind on this Ullr and the rotations that he's already had, I think United will be happy with it. There's a big waterfall that goes up and traps down Eonic. Wlfy, just as I mentioned him, rotates over, grabs his first kill of the game, and suddenly we're all tied up, but Scream is here. Inbound gets knocked down. It's a 1-for-1 trade so far. Weak and low. Sunbreaker trying to just chip away at the Hoonbats. Snoopy is in range, looking for the back, dash right on through. Just need one auto to connect, but Snoopy doesn't hit it. He might just get out alive. Scream continuing, though, on Wlfy. Low health bars all over the map aggro, and somehow we ended a 1-for-1.
Man, that is close, but no cigar for multiple members of eUnited. And the fact that both Weekend and Wlfy survived there is massive for keeping this game closer to even, because already eUnited get way more XP and gold during that period of that fight. But to end up not losing 2 more members could have been a Gold Fury after the fact, because you know United can't do it with how low Hurriwind was, how little mana Scream had. But if they know that there's nobody on the map at that point, then it's not too big of a deal. Wouldn't have been such a bad call, but having those members survive even without them having to go back to base most likely, it makes a pretty big impact.
No, and I think we've talked about it a little bit, where Obey seem much more in this game than maybe a time or two we've seen them so far this split. I mean, I think you've got to be happy with the way this Obey team has looked 10 minutes into this game.
All you can ask for is that Obey is improving every week, and I think it's very, very clear that they are. Now, there's a discussion about whether or not it's improving at the right rate, all this kind of stuff. All of that isn't super relevant right now. The fact that they're improving is really the big news, and that's a good sign for them.
Well, Inbound is going to just try to self-peel a little bit. Weekend, he's found the second kill of the game. Snoopy, though, over in that long lane, has finally traded out one onto Wowy. Life of the party, and Inbound is the guest, but he's able to walk away. Weekend unable to say the same for himself. There is still a 3-man chase. Tier 1 tower might be a safe haven, but Hurriwind kicks down the door. Weekend back to base. He's 2-1-1. Best look early game we've seen here from Weekend, but eUnited, they continue to find these trades. Just a 1-man advantage again. It is a 2-for-1 as Scream falls, but these slow, small leads for eUnited starting to grow a little bit bigger.
They are, and Obey has to be worried that they're using a few too many resources on getting their initial call. Their initial target call has worked out well. They blew up Eonic on this purple buff a little bit ago with a Hunbat's ult and a Yemoja ult together. And again, that's an improvement from what we saw, where that was not happening effectively previously. So you've got that as a boon for you moving forward, but you still have to have the next level of what's going to happen after we use everything on the first person. Can we still take this team fight? Who's our next target? What's happening when the comms are a little bit more cluttered? All those things still need to be worked on.
Whoa, Inbound catches the stun. Be careful. Hurriwind is 3-0. He hits you with that axe. He's going to turn and pour plenty of damage into you, and Inbound learns that the hard way. Wowy has been able to leap out, but the water carpet from Scream, well, will allow him to digress, and the rest of eUnited maybe as well. And at this point, Gold Fury is up, and you kind of get those vibes. All of eUnited has started to rotate over to this left side of the jungle.
But Hurriwind doesn't have his beads. He used it when Weekend jumped in to get rid of that slow. So Weekend's ultimate coming up means that might be an opportunity here for Obey.
Variety burns life of the party just to try to pull in Wlfy. Gold Fury chipped away, 10% HP. eUnited has grabbed it, but can they get out alive? Ducky might even fall as well. That's the stun down onto the Wukong, looking for a bit of re-engage as you leap off of the cloud back behind his Harpies. So it's a Gold Fury for none, and eUnited expands their lead.
I really like this adjustment that eUnited has made, because we saw Snoopy play Ullr a couple weeks ago up against Renegades. I believe that was last week. And it just did not look particularly good as Hurriwind in trouble here in the mid lane. No beats for him, but actually is able to jump away.
Yeah, it's a decent Rivers rebuke, but Hurriwind leaps on out of it. The stun is there, but Variety saves the life of Hurriwind this time around for a clean kill from eUnited. Only Wowy still has his ultimate online, and he's nowhere near the rest of that team fight. So bad to worse here for Obey, where they kept themselves in this early game so well. But you talk about, 2-for-1 trades kind of across the board. eUnited really starting to pull away now at 13 minutes in.
Yeah, that's a pretty big lead for eUnited at this point. Excuse me. And one of the reasons why I think that they've done so well has been the Ullr in the mid lane for Hurriwind. 3-0-2, been a part of 5 of the 7 kills for eUnited, been really across the map. And this is the adjustment that I was talking about, where Snoopy played this Ullr against Renegades, and it just didn't feel super impactful. Certainly not as impactful as a lot of the Ullr play we've seen in the duo lane or in mid lane. And I think a lot of people might forget that Hurriwind was one of the original Hunter mid players way back in the day in North America. And so giving him this Ullr pick, he looks comfortable on it, he's played aggressively on it, and has gotten himself a really big lead, which is why you're first picking this god, is not to be, 0-0-0 15 minutes into the game necessarily. It's to get leads like this.
Well, that's Pyromancer for eUnited, and they're going to be able to win the fight. Eonic is going to look to re-engage. Rivers rebuke, but Inbound catches a little bit of damage on his way out. Eonic staggered down, stunned up against the wall. Maybe a nice setup kill there from Wowy, and it sure is. Some good healing to keep Variety and the rest of the team alive. Fear No Evil sends a few running here, but eUnited, they're not worse for wear on the end of it. Ducky slams down Variety. It's a 2-for-none for Obey, but Scream will roll his way in. Inbound finally back to base. It's a 2-for-1, make it a 2-for-2. Snoopy rejoins the fight. One final shot onto Weekend's all he needs. Unable to find it. Batz will leap out and stay alive. Ducky burns the blink. It's a 2-for-2 and a Pyromancer for eUnited.
Man, that was close. That was close to being really, really good for Obey. Weekend had a phenomenal Fear No Evil there. Waited until Variety stepped up, blinks behind him, separates Variety, gets him killed, but then the rest of the backline just can't get away from Obey. And now with the overstay here by Wlfy in the mid lane, Snoopy with that nice wrap around, this is going to open up even more buff invades for Scream. It's going to make sure that he can't get pressured on that left-hand side. And it's just another unnecessary death by Obey. But, look, we expected eUnited to come in and look pretty good here. I think that this is a team that after beating Rival Week 1 has a lot more eyes on it. And Obey is a team that has struggled so far. I think Obey has done things much better, as we've talked about, but eUnited still looks like they're returning to form a little bit here up against Obey.
I think that's a great point to make, because you look at eUnited and they come out of the gate swinging week 1, 2-0 Rival, slip up against Radiance, and we talked about it in the pregame interview a little bit. They seemed okay with that. They realized that they were playing well, and some calls maybe through a couple of those games. Then they lose 2-0 to Renegades. So this is a team that started off as heavily on the tracks as you can be, and then came off a little bit in the last couple of weeks. So I think eUnited have to be thrilled with the way this game has gone 16 minutes in, just slowly building up on some of those leads. I mean, if you're looking at Obey, you have a couple of kills and a couple of assists on Weekend. The Batz is really going to start to swing here as you move into the late game, and it's been a different look, I think, to be fair, at Weekend, and we've already touched on it, but the aggression has been there. I think a good Fear No Evil can maybe help Obey find a grasp here.
Yeah, it's really contingent on these big ultimates coming from Weekend, and frankly, he's found them so far this game. He's had a lot of really good Fear No Evils, but Batz damage, Batz is a character that I feel like in the early game, it's, okay, I'm doing not great damage, but I'm great setup. And through the mid game, you're like, okay, I can do some good damage, but it's not going to 100-0 anyone. And then all of a sudden, you hit 5 items or 6 items, and you just one-shot everybody. It's a very steep curve for Hun Batz, is the way that I always feel when I'm playing that character. And so until Weekend hits that point, it's really contingent on how many people he can get in there to help him. And the way that Variety and Eonic have been able to create space, probably a little bit too much space because they're dying for it sometimes, is going to be difficult to get past and go in and help Weekend. But that's what he needs.
Inbound looking for another Rivers Rebuke engage, and naturally Scream has to use the ultimate to disengage from Ducky, who's found the opening kill here in this fight, and a good knockup will return some damage as Snoopy drops down the Sunbreaker. 4 or 5 members of Obey backpedaling away from this Primal Fury, and looks like they're just going to take that, get a kill onto Scream, get ourselves out alive, take these small wins where we can find them.
That's huge. I mean, that Rivers Rebuke from Inbound was certainly not what he was looking for, but Scream just takes too much damage from Wowy's ultimate. Wowy and Ducky combined right there to do some great work and put Scream down before he can get away. And now in a 5v4, United still feeling like they can fight, knowing that every ultimate is down on Obey's side.
Not shaken by a numbers disadvantage. Primal Fury reset, but it's weakened to even up the numbers here. Life of the party pulls an Inbound, and he's an early exit from this one. See you later, and now there's 3 members of Obey on the run, and somehow eUnited turn around that fight, and maybe you look at the ultimates, not a lot were left online there from Obey, where eUnited, they had a few.
That is huge, especially when eUnited has these characters that punish you for not having beat so well in Baron Samedi, or Hurriwind, who's just always down to fight on the Ullr as a stance switcher. He doesn't care about not having his ultimate, because he never has one. So these extended engagements with the great DPS they have from Double Hunter, United leverage that on the objective well, and they're doing it again here, winning their fight and heading straight to Fire Giant. Obey likely know that this is happening and just know that they can't do anything about it, so they do the right thing. They go to this Primal Fury and make sure they're at least getting something for themselves that United can't take.
And the power play begins for eUnited, and just shy of 20 minutes into the game, the first Fire Giant is locked down. Still undying is Hurriwind in that middle lane. And he's gonna add another kill under his belt. Now 9 affected kills, 4-0-5. Inbound, 30 seconds on the death timer, and aggro, this could turn into a Phoenix defense maybe earlier than Obey were expecting.
And that's going to be difficult because they have this Double Hunter composition. It's what I love about this comp for United. Not only are you giving Hurriwind the Ullr, but it frees Snoopy up to get one of his best gods, if not his best god, in Ho-Yi, that is also a high priority hunter. It just leaves them with such a potent team fight ultimate now with the Ho-Yi, which oftentimes you're missing in Double Hunter compositions. And Snoopy's looked very, very comfortable on this. The 2 hunters are top of the player damage charts so far here for United.
And it's a different look as well. Don't necessarily have to dive fully deep into it, but Devo's Gauntlet into the Rage, I think, is something that we saw very early on here in some games earlier this split, really even in the SEC qualifier. Some teams have kind of moved away from it. But Snoopy obviously realizing that a Rage in a game like this where you're going to be getting a lot of kills and assists can certainly hit its mark.
And it's not going to be easy for Ducky to build Spectral here necessarily, because he's already gone for a fairly offensive build with the Soul Eater into a couple shields. So he's not going to be able to build Spectral and feel super tanky either way. So it's not a big deal for that. I mean, you've got Inbound on the other side, who's Yemoja. He's going to try and prioritize making sure he's getting all his Omi up. He will with this build so far. But now, I mean, if he goes Spectral, sure, I'm just so far ahead, it doesn't matter. In fact, Snoopy backs and just buys Deathbringer outright because he knows that this game is likely to just be over before anyone from Obey can afford a Spectral armor.
I'm curious, kind of talking on that itemization really quick, are you at all concerned about lack of anti-heal? I mean, there's obviously a Divine Ruin for Wlfy, but you look at eUnited and all the healing they're able to do. Do you need to see more here from Obey 20-so minutes into this game?
No, I don't think so. I think that they're in a good spot with their anti-heal. They've got a Brawlers from Weekend, the Divine from Wlfy. Variety has some good healing, and you want to get some anti-heal on it, but you don't need a 100% anti-heal Consigned Spirits. It's not that big of a deal. Eonic's got Protector Surge, but you know the Bancrofts is there as well for Scream. You don't need any more than this.
We stand about even maybe on the anti-heal conversation. Good Rivers Rebuke will split this fight, but United able to just leap out back to safety. Eonic is low. Here's Obey are going to step toe just outside of their left side Phoenix, but it's a big team fighting ultimate used. That's a 5 versus 4 ultimate advantage here, and eUnited, they're just going to return right back to the left side.
I mean, Inbound is going to get it up fairly soon. He's got a lot of CDR, but feel like it might not be up in time. Variety is really just looking for healing on the enemy team, but a good job by Wlfy to pop his Magi.
Variety, the one playing front and center, and he's going to look to pull a few in. Decent pillar will kind of separate the fight, but Weekend has taken so much damage. Wow, he sends the spears flying, and Eonic catches them all. And that's the first kill of this one, but Snoopy turns it around. Ducky, the solo laner of Obey, takes a backseat as Scream will blink his way around the left-hand side here. 1-for-1 trade, but United, they're not dissuaded.
Not yet, but a good heal from Variety. That's actually a clutch one because there isn't a whole lot of anti-heal applied at the time. There's a big ultimate by Inbound.
Oh, and they're trapped in there, but Hurriwind has so much damage, he's actually able to find the first kill onto Inbound. Snoopy is low, and they're going to just finally start chipping away some damage at this left side Phoenix. Obey, too low to maybe contest here. They're going to give up the Phoenix, and finally, United will crack the base.
That was a great call by United to not panic too much when that Rivers Rebuke came down, because that was a strong ult by Inbound. It locks in Variety, it cuts off the Phoenix, but Hurriwind just goes right in onto Inbound, and Scream found him with a knockup as well, and those two together basically one-shot Inbound, and it makes sure that the rest of Obey know that they can't just step up now because there's still a lot of damage on the side of eUnited. They get the left side Phoenix, not a huge, big, game-winning Fire Giant there by eUnited. They actually end up being pretty close to even when it comes to gold, only plus 2,000 during that Fire Giant buff. That's not a lot at this stage, but they didn't have that much gold on the map to take because they'd already taken it all before that point.
It's 3 kills, a Phoenix, just a little bit of gold here at this point, and this is maybe what I expect from eUnited. The FG buff just falls off. It's going to be up right now, and I'm not sure Obey really, not necessarily don't care, but I think they're smart enough to realize that's not a winning fight for themselves, and again, they're going to pull out that Oni Fury, at least get a little counter push going, but it's Fire Giant, Oni Fury, and you get a tier 1 tower for Obey, so a little extra gold, but United, they're looking like they're on the hunt. Weekend might get drop shipped on. Suddenly, 4 members of eUnited back behind the Obey Alliance jungler. He'll drop down the Fear No Evil and will leap us up away, but look at the collapse from eUnited. Snoopy's right there to follow up. 1 kill down, 50 seconds on the Weekend death timer.
And that's exactly what I'm talking about when I'm talking about a character that can do something that no other god in the game does. No other god in the game, save maybe Giannis, gets them on top of Hunbats that well.
Variety might be the sacrificial lamb here as Obey have cleaned up 1, evens this one up at a 4 versus 4. Eonic running away from Ducky here, and he'll be able to do so just fine as the 3 versus 3 fight continued over in the mid lane. But we saw eUnited, I mean, they are not dissuaded from kind of fighting real close to these Phoenixes, especially not with these Fire Giant buffs on. And with Weekend gone, that's no Fear No Evil for the next 10 or so seconds. eUnited, they might just barrel down this mid lane.
Yeah, that was just a way overextension by Variety, just poor positioning and a good job by Obey to punish him. And no teleport for him either, so this is a 5v4 now in earnest on this Phoenix. And now that Weekend has respawned, not surprised to see eUnited give this one up. Just go push out their waves, clear out some buffs, invade what you can, and then reset whenever Variety is back up and ready.
Yeah, that's smart. They will have Variety in 5 seconds, but Variety's teleport still down for about a minute and a half here. Pyromancer locked away. How confident are you, though, in that Obey Alliance Phoenix defense? It seems like so much of these fights have really stemmed from Inbound, looking for a big Rivers Rebuke, and to his credit, I think has found some. But I feel like eUnited have just been able to shrug that off, wait for the waters to fall, and then kind of just jump back into the fight.
I think Obey's defense is very strong, actually, on these Phoenixes. I mean, between Rivers Rebuke, Wowie's Pillar makes it hard to siege into it. Fear No Evil can separate a tank that's trying to tank up the Phoenix from their carries very easily. Merlin, one of the best in terms of Phoenix defense. Obey has a lot of tools on this Phoenix defense, but double Hunter comps are difficult to stuff on these Phoenix defenses because it doesn't take 2 of them long to chop down your Phoenix, and they might not win fights and end the game as easily as having a big mage ultimate that's going to just end it all. But if the ultimate goal is to just get the Phoenix, which it should be on most Phoenix sieges, then you're going to end up having a tougher time dealing with double Hunter.
Well, Hurriwind and Snoopy are certainly having themselves a day. Eonic, Variety, both locked into the River's Rebuke. There will be a couple disengaged leaps there. A nice bit of stun, though, onto the front line of Obey Alliance as Eonic moves his way back in. Scream will dash himself in as well. Ducky, three-manning the back line of eUnited. You're never going to win that one. Not when Hurriwind's 6-0-6. Left side, Phoenix looking nervous. Just needs a few more shots here. One back, and that's Weekend going for some healing. An attempted stun from Inbound will not connect. Hurriwind still playing front and center. Axe no good. 1-for-1 trade, and the left side Phoenix falls yet again.
That was a really good defensive sequence by Wlfy. He put out a ton of damage on that left side Phoenix.
Snoopy is just going to move back to the middle lane. Watch out, United and Eonic might be looking to engage, but this time it's a one-man drops it just to turn some heads of Obey Alliance. Scream still kind of plugging away at that mid lane. Phoenix, Eonics will be tanking it up for the time being. Hurriwind wraps back around and essentially one-shots it. This time the River's Rebuke won't really disengage all that much. Scream taking low, some good damage from Wlfy. Will maybe make the United jungler think twice. Weekend finally capitalizes and puts Snoopy in the dirt for only the second time this game, and this is maybe the defense that Obey needed.
But it might be a little bit too late, Dave. I mean, they already lost both left and mid Phoenix, and Obey realizing that this might be their best opportunity, knowing that Snoopy's dead, but they have to worry about these waves coming down the left-hand side and where Variety is.
Scream might just roll on through. Hurriwind, he's dropped for the first time this game by Wlfy. Scream, though, we're getting to that late game point where this Hebo is just going to pour damage out on you. Ducky is going to try to get out and will take to the skies into his ultimate and leaps over the wall here. So Wukong's life saved for the time being, and losing Hurriwind for 40 seconds, I think, admittedly, that's huge for Obey.
I mean, the Fire Giant's going to be up fairly soon, so you think maybe Obey has a chance at rushing it down, but the front line is here for eUnited, and Scream is more than enough damage to keep everybody off of it. So I don't think Obey is going to have much more of an opportunity than to push out these waves, maybe pick up another Fury, because they've been trading Fury for Fire a lot so far this game, but this Fire Giant, at least the next one that eUnited's going to get, likely to get, is going to be enhanced. And that's going to make it much, much harder on these defenses. Now you don't have to worry about getting these waves into the Phoenix. It's going to be difficult to stop these back doors. In between waves, you could just pop your tank in, double Hunter autos a couple times, and then that Phoenix down to half HP before you know it.
Unless the FG is burned down in the next 10 seconds, which actually could be, it will be enhanced here. Ducky realizes that eUnited are doing the Fire Giant. Inbound will trap in a few, but they're just going to turn themselves back and walk away. A massive team fighting ultimate. Desert Fury as well, used by Wowy here. Only Sunbreaker from Snoopy dropped down so far in this fight. And that's just enough to make Obey think twice, but Eonic could look to engage. It's Inbound who's back behind him. Hurriwind is here as well. Blink forward. Ducky a bit caught out, will have the ultimate if he needs to get himself out alive, and that's all United need, and they're going to turn back to the Fire Giant.
And they're a little bit worse for wear for it, but not by much. And this Fire Giant defense from Obey is going to be difficult, knowing the relics are starting to come up now for United.
Variety playing frontline here. Life of the party is going to get canceled early. Ducky takes to the skies. Fire Giant has been locked down by eUnited in the meantime, but how will this fight go? A decent Fear No Evil sends Variety right back into the awaiting arms of Inbound, and Snoopy just gets knocked back. That's a decent portal there from Inbound, but it's 4 members of eUnited strong. Make their way back to a tier 2 tower that's no longer there, and the Alliance won't go fishing any further.
Man, that was a great Fear No Evil from Weekend. I mean, he's found these really, really good ultimates just about every single time. He blinks in, separates Variety completely, gets everybody else turned the other way. Snoopy has to use some relics. Obey is doing things well, in the consistency just has not been there. As soon as they get some consistency online, I think they're going to have a better time. It just feels like it's a little bit too late. I mean, they're down 10K, and against 4 members that have Enhanced Fire, Variety's been isolated a whole bunch this game. He's struggled to stay alive in the late game, but unless the Obey can actually kill Hurry and Snoopy consistently, I just don't see how they transfer this from a solid defense after solid defense to actually being able to win the game.
Yeah, that seems to be the key here, right? And Hurriwind and Snoopy have had themselves a game. It's 6-1-7. Obviously, 1 death for Hurriwind. Snoopy has only died twice. Combine those, and that's lowest on the team, tied with Scream and Eonic. So getting to these backliners has proven difficult for Obey. There is a Spectral Armor picked up by Weekend, so you can tell his mindset is maybe try to jump onto one of these hunters and just shrug off some of that damage.
It's just difficult, man, to try and switch gears when you've been losing for 20 minutes straight, right? I mean, 13 minutes in, it was a 4K deficit for Obey, and now you've done well to still be clawing into this game, but at some point, it's just difficult to try and turn that from, okay, we just need to stop losing as hard, to winning. You know, that actually is a conversation that needs to happen.
Well, this is an interesting look at things. A 3-man split. We're used to kind of seeing this 4-1 attack 2 lanes, but it's Scream on the right. Variety and Snoopy now in the mid. Right side Phoenix does get taken down, and I imagine we'll see both teams kind of meld right back into one another once again, with the mid lane Phoenix being quite low here. Really just needs 1 or 2 autos from Hurriwind or Snoopy. The duel on the right side, this one goes the way of United, and at this point you're just looking for an engaged Scream hanging out off on this right-hand side.
Knows he needs to be careful without beads. Didn't highlight it earlier, but a Polynomicon here for Scream means that this already difficult to stop siege is so much harder, and that's the reason why he split pushes that right side.
Weekend has found the engage maybe he was hoping for, but Scream, look at that lifesteal, is going to help top him off just a little bit. I don't know if it saves his life, but it definitely keeps him in the fight a little bit longer. Jungle ult for jungle ult, and Ducky has to pop the Wukong ult as well. Now mid lane Phoenix is going to be a little bit worse for wear, with Variety having to move his way out of it. Burns the beads this time to keep from getting stunned up by Inbound, and River's Rebuke used as well. So 3 key defensive ultimates maybe now missing for Obey.
And that mid Phoenix is still on its last legs. 1 polyproc does it for Scream.
Eonic moves his way in. It's the front line now of Obey. They're going to move themselves out. Scream still kind of hanging in that back line. Weaken deleted by Hurriwind here. 4 members of Obey Alliance huddled around this left side Phoenix. Ducky, you don't have your ultimate to disengage from this fight. Snoopy, though, ends up falling, but that's a drop ship, a double kill for Hurriwind, and he's still swinging away as Wowy is going to finally leap back to safety. It's going to be 3 Phoenixes down, and the siege continues for United.
Good damage from Wlfy. It's critical to keep these health bars low, but with Fire Giant Sustain still on, only for another 5 seconds, I think United can just walk in. This Titan is too weak.
Well, you have both your carries and your Guardian, I suppose. If you want anyone to defend, that's one good way of doing it. Wowy gonna get locked down here, plugged some damage away. Titan under attack, United full strength minus Snoopy. Wowy takes a backseat to Scream as the Hebo will roll his way in. Titan being chipped away now as Eonic will turn his attention over to Inbound, and Variety will continue plugging away damage. Once he falls, I think it's all said and done. Hurriwind, Eonic, Scream, all in range. Titan falls, and eUnited strike first.
It takes them 35 minutes, though, in a couple of good defensive sequences by Obey Alliance, who did a lot of things better that game. But when you just are that far down that early, I mean, losing every single purple buff, Yemoja's there to make sure that your team fight is good and that your lane is good. That's what makes her so strong, is that she's really good at both stages of the game. It just didn't feel that way for Inbound. It didn't feel like that Yemoja was impactful often enough. A couple of really good ultimates, but not able to find them consistently enough. And ultimately, Weekend, I mean, it has a bunch of really, really good Fear No Evils, a bunch of them. But then a really bad pathing mistake without his Fear No Evil, going from mid Phoenix to left Phoenix and jumping into everybody. That decision was weird. We're getting there, you know, baby steps.
Right, I agree.
It feels like, but eUnited certainly just looks stronger right now.
Small moments better, I think. The early game, despite in the long lane, as you point out, not going fully in favor of Obey. I think still things to hang your hat on moving here into game 2. But as you point out, eUnited, they're the ones who strike first, but we're done talking about it. We'll let Finch take it away.
Thanks, Dulcin and Aggro. eUnited do come out on top, but I think I agree with the way that they just broke it down, those two casters. In particular, that Obey are starting to make the right steps. And this is the SPL, man. It's not going to be a switch that you flip on and suddenly that they're taking sets off these teams. It's too competitive. But these are the small incremental improvements, I think, that Obey have to show us for them to start getting there. So that's my piece about how Obey looked better. Now it's time to talk about how eUnited bopped off. I did not think Hurriwind was going to be piloting the Ullr, but I apologize to my man Tyler because he popped off this game. I love him on the Ullr mid.
Yeah, 9-2-7 at the end of the game. There's a point I took a mark at 25 minutes. He was 5-0-6. I believe he went up to 6-0-6 at least before getting eliminated, getting that first death is a better way to word it. And it's just, it's so much focus specifically from Obey, and this is actually where a lot of these team fights can really be broken down. Early game, it was, man, they're investing a whole lot, and they're not really finding as many kills. Scream does too much damage. And then it became, okay, now Ducky's killing Scream, but Hurriwind and Snoopy are just monsters to deal with, and no one is looking at them. And so they shifted the dynamic. Scream early on was helping turn a lot of these fights because Hebo damage. It just does what it does, especially once he had a few items online. And Ducky started making that call. He would go into the backline. He'd use his ult to get over towards that Hebo and put him under duress. And then the two hunters would just be like, all right, now's our time to shine. Let's keep going, because no one's looking at them anymore.
I feel like this replay we're seeing right now is the backbreaker, though, Gore. If for me, this was where you saw Obey Alliance get that first pick actually pretty cleanly. It's a 5v4 in their favor around the gold field. Then they end up losing the 5v4 to eUnited, I think, because they're able to use their ultimates a little bit better. The life of the party was still there for Variety. Had a great game on this Baron Samedi. And that's the kind of thing that I think that Obey have to make sure they're cleaning up. Sometimes they put themselves into the driver's seat, and it feels like they just can't turn the key to start the car or something like that. That is a situation where your team should be up and favorable. At the very least, you can't lose a whole bunch of people and the theory on the back of it, right? At least get out of there and just give it up or something like that. Those kinds of mistakes are the ones that are head-scratching to me from Obey, and that just can't be happening.
And that fight, along with a lot of them around that time mark in the game, Obey are initiating the fights, and they are usually getting that first pick, and it looks really good. Right. The problem is they're dropping a lot of their ults to get that pick. I mean, you're talking Rivers Rebuke and the Fear No Evil minimum to get one person on the other side. And sometimes it was just Eonic, which is a good pick, but it's not going to be game-changing for you. And so you have these re-engages from eUnited where they recognize, look, you guys don't have anything to fight us with. You might have a numbers advantage, but what are you going to do? Like, laugh at us? You can hit 4 all you want. Nothing's coming out of there. So they could use their ults and go forward with it. And enough of those fights led to the point where there was like a 4-level lead for the jungle. There was a 2-level lead in mid, a 3-level lead for the carries. Like, it was just too much to handle for at a certain point where Obey, you can jump in and fight, but the hill is just too steep to climb.
And that's what I'm trying to get to, right? It's not even that. Obviously, you want to clean up the initial picks. You don't commit too many resources. But in a world where you've committed too many resources, the only thing worse from then on is to also lose a bunch of people in the team fight, right? And maybe you just have to give up on that fight at that point and leave with the one pick that you got. Someone on this team has got to recognize that state a little bit better, I'm thinking, so that they don't compound their losses. That's what it feels like, really, to me, is what hurts Obey.
Well, I'm excited to see it because, you know, we've mentioned it, and it is absolutely the truth. Obey have improved drastically from last week, and that was a drastic improvement from week 1, right? It's big steps from week to week. I want to see what their small steps look like, right? When it's going from game to game. I think banning off the Ullr and the Hebo is like one of the best decisions to start this off with. Granted, it still leaves a lot open, but there's so much that's on the table. They can scoop up a good first pick and still have their, I guess, technically 4th and 5th pick in the game coming through in their favor here, depending on what comes up for eUnited. So there's still a little bit of flexibility for some counterplay, and, well, depending on what they grab, it can look good for them. I don't know if Yemoja did so much last game that I'm like, yes, she's necessary.
There's a lot of dying.
But I still don't know if I want Eonic to have Yemoja either.
Right, so maybe that's the idea here, is trying to take out of his hands. It was uninspiring, though. I mean, I don't know any other way to describe it. I believe the Horus out-healed the Yemoja last game when we saw those numbers at the end of the game, too. I mean, it wasn't enough from Inbound, and we know this guy's capable of more. It just wasn't there. But Obey, if they're top picking it, they clearly trust that he can pivot, right, and come back around and give us a better Yemoja performance here. You heard Aggro talk about it. Part of the reason why you pick her is that she's strong in your laning phase and then also almost unbeatable in terms of her team fight presence. But we didn't get either one of those elements from Bobby last game. One of those two, at the very least, needs to improve this time.
And the biggest problem I'm having is I'm having flashbacks to last week when instead of Yemoja up there, it ended up being the Jormungandr, where it was just like, well, you know, they're putting a lot of precedence on Ducky to be the one in that game. I'm just wondering if maybe Obey have this in their mind of, okay, you know what? Like, yes, it's good to look and find out when something maybe wasn't the problem, but maybe wasn't a helper either. But you have to push and pull with it. I don't think Thor and Merlin on the other side are enough on their own to say, like, okay, cool, you've lost the draft so far. But unless, like you said, there's a drastic turnaround for what we see out of this Yemoja, it might end up falling flat. I think you get weakened back on the Hunbats, so that's a good look and a good feel. And then maybe a little bit more damage now with the Raijin coming up in the mid. If you're looking at that 3v3 like we were talking about earlier, this is a very solid 3v3 combo. You've got sustain, you've got CC, you've got damage. Everything you want out of it to control the game. They just have to play together.
Yeah, on paper, this fight's nasty, right? I mean, the Taiko drums, the Fear No Evil, and the River's Rebuke. That's too much control. It's too much to try and fight. You don't have enough. Yeah, you don't have enough relics. You don't have enough Aegis. You don't have enough to get away from it, in theory. But eUnited have kind of picked to bunker bust that team fight, right? With this Odin, with this Thor, with this Merlin. Before the fight even starts, in some cases, this Odin might have already isolated someone, the Thor there to dunk two, and potentially one of the key cogs of this machine might have already been removed. I like what Obey have if they get to that point where they get to fight as a unit. It's just a question of if eUnited might kind of fracture those pieces off before they ever get to form the puzzle.
Especially considering the pace of last game, right? By the time you're fighting as a unit, you're down 4k gold, and there's not much you could do about it, right? So you have to control this early game a little bit better for you. Depends very heavily on how the 2v2 goes in the side lane or the 1v1 for the solo laner. And realistically, how aggressive Weekend gets early on. I mean, he got first blood in that last game, but they immediately traded out 1-for-1. If you can slow down eUnited's answer whenever you throw out your call, there's no response, then maybe you start picking up those kills just a little cleaner. It's the disengage that matters the most for Obey in a lot of these engagements. And I think Hunbats as well as Raijin can both get out just as easily as they can get in.
Well, the ROM going to be picked up for Obey. I'm a bit surprised. I might not have minded seeing something a bit more pressure-oriented, but ROM should certainly be great as an all-around strong hunter. They're going to add the Achilles to it, and that is a bit more pressure, right? And tons of kill potential in their team fight when they group up two around that execute on that fatal strike. Right. But the Xbalanque picked up for eUnited, and now this Sobek, to me, this feels more and more pick-oriented the more I see from it. I mean, they are really good team fight tools, but if you shut out the lights and suddenly someone's displaced, then suddenly you're in a 5v4 before you even really got a chance to start fighting.
And Sobek is such a beautiful double dip because it's going to give you a little bit of aggression to help fight in that duo lane, but it is also that 50% anti-heal that is something you can never overlook, specifically against something like Yemoja. Hey, there's 3 people in front of him. He's healing, and he's stopping you from healing all in one go.
Well, Obey looked better in Game 1, but can they look good enough to take down eUnited? Let's find out, Dulcet, with Game 2.
United took Game 1, but not without their struggles. It was a bit of a slugfest, 35 or so minutes long, and I figured we might be seeing this kind of picking up the conversation right where Gore left off. Variety playing this Sobek in the solo lane. I mean, I'm nervous if I'm Obey seeing that. I mean, you talk about Variety and how good he is as a player. Ducky certainly is as well. But the Sobek, absolutely a god. That's in Variety's wheelhouse and could be a big difference maker, especially if you're looking for picks, which United might just be looking to do.
And interesting that they actually decide to put the Merlin for Snoopy over there in the long lane and not in mid lane for Hurriwind. But you're right. To go with what you were saying, this is a classic pick for Variety. And he is one of the most impactful solo Beck players in the entire game. I think that anytime United gets this for their solo laner, they should be feeling pretty good about their chances. But putting this Merlin over there in the long lane means that they're basically conceding early pressure on that side of the map. And as a result, Eonic's actually here in mid to help fight.
We'll talk about early pressure. That's Wlfy who has to now disengage from this fight and will find safety beneath the Tier 1 tower. But it's so surprising, I think, that United kind of looked to forego that early pressure after what worked for them in Game 1. I mean, you look at the overwhelming presence they had in that long lane. I mean, I guess you're just kind of returning things to normal. Snoopy will be able to farm up just fine. But it really seemed like balancing out Weekend's early game was really Eonic and Snoopy in the long lane.
And that's just a different sort of style that they want to try and go for here. But I agree that I'm surprised when it works so well. Why change it? You know, why go with something different in this moment? But I don't think it's so different that it's going to really hurt their chances of winning here necessarily. I mean, they still have good pressure. Xbalanque brings better pressure in the mid lane than I think a lot of people give him credit for. He doesn't clear as well as a traditional mage like Raijin necessarily, but his kill pressure is high. He still brings that great team fight presence with that ultimate And ultimately, Snoopy's going to end up getting a lot of farm over there in that long lane, especially if Eonic is not going to spend any time over there at all. This is kind of shades of Season 6, where Eonic doesn't even start over there and just allows Snoopy to free farm it up.
It's going to be a bit of a split in the long lane for Obey, as Inbound is still indeed hanging around. So maybe kind of looking to turn the tables a little bit from what we saw in game number 1, but the aggression continues here in the middle lane. Stun being held onto by Eonic. Perfect timing. The beads wear out from Wlfy, and Eonic lets that spear fly, and the rotation from Odin strikes for first blood.
That was so well played by Eonic. He knows that Wlfy has to beads or he's dead. So I'll just wait it out, because he's either going to get hit by the slow from Hurriwind's poison darts and get killed because of that, or he's going to beads early and I can just hold this stun and barrel stuff it. Unmissable at that range. And Eonic picks up that first blood and uses that Odin pressure that if it's not going to be in dual lane, at least it's doing something here in mid lane.
Yeah, I suppose that's true, right? I mean, I kind of give him a hard time. Well, why are you leaving all the pressure in the long lane? Well, it's still there, just on a different part of the map, and I think you could really feel the vibes of that first kill coming. Hurriwind and Eonic they kept finding presence here in this middle lane. It just seemed like something was bound to happen, and finally Eonic is the one who strikes for first blood. So now I'm wondering where Inbound goes, because he had been in this long lane for so long. Well, for so long, it's been 3.5 minutes, but through the first 3.5 minutes of this game. Now I'm wondering if he maybe starts to take his talents elsewhere on the map and maybe just try to prop up some of what's already happened in the mid lane.
Yeah, I think that you kind of have to. I mean, at this point, if you're Obey, you have to just try and find some weak point. And I don't know that Weekend trying to gank Snoopy is really going to pay off here, knowing that Weekend is going to hit level 5 right now, but he's only got boots 2. Snoopy's playing so far back in this lane. It's one of the things that makes Merlin ADC, so to speak, Merlin in the long lane, really good, is that it's a fairly hard character to zone at times. But a great dash catches Hurriwind's Rising Jaguar. Well played by Wlfy. He was a hair late on doing that on top right, but then he gets it on the top left. Nicely done.
Well, and that just gets them right back in this game. Not that they were out of it, but kind of tilts things back to even. And I think what we wanted to see from Obey continue from game number 1, where Weekend did such a good job of finding presence on the map in game 1, and Obey were just unable to fully make those, one-for-one trades without, losing an extra member. So I like the idea of kind of returning back to that mid lane, and I guess if there's a bright spot for eUnited, it's that Hurriwind just held on to his beads there. So Weekend showing that, yet again, he will not shy away, especially on this Batz, now level 5, and might do so again. He's going to drop Fear No Evil, but Snoopy is going to walk away, and actually mid lane assist there from Hurriwind, so Weekend still looking for these early game ganks.
And that's a great trade for Weekend, to get beads out from Snoopy, open up that lane to be ganked again soon, and get Hurriwind's ult all at the same time is huge. And I like what Obey's done. They put pressure on this purple buff consistently.
There's going to be a collapse here. Eonic taken very low. Execute just leapt away from. Ducky, though, still wants the kill, and Wlfy's going to be the one to find it. Suddenly, this Raijin has 2 kills under his belt, so the rotation from the mid lane to the short lane has been successful so far here from Obey.
And this has been good from them. They put pressure on the purple buff. They understand where eUnited is likely going to go in response to that pressure. It's not great for them to try and defend those purples over and over again. Why not prop up variety on the Sobek? I mean, they've got good defense on purple if they want to use Scream's ultimate and rotate Eonic over. But if they want Snoopy to just get as much solo farm as humanly possible, then just using that kind of power vacuum that is created by all those purple buff invades by Obey makes more sense to go for blue buff invades of your own. But a good response by Obey. They understand that that's going to be their response, and they play around it well.
Wlfy's feeling confident, and for good reason. Suddenly the Raijin is swung for 3 straight kills in this game. Watch out, Scream has taken to the sky, but I think plenty far out of range now are Obey Alliance, so just a bit of mobility there from Scream. And Wlfy, talk about the turnaround. Game 1, it was a lot of Weekend finding kills, and Wlfy, despite dying first, has now turned it around for the killing spree.
And he's looked great so far on this Raijin, playing aggressively, and really where of all of his aggressive plays come, it's been around these mid-harpies. It's because Scream has not really been there for these mid-harpies a whole lot. He's been off farming elsewhere. Hurriwind has been solo contesting them. Then he's been killed for it twice and nearly killed for it a third time
I think that there needs to be an adjustment by eUnited's mid laner now to understand that Wlfy's going to be able to play up in these moments.
Ducky playing a little bit up here. Variety maybe considering a little bit more, but will, I think, smartly back off. And actually, it's Screammmmm who's kind of wrapping around the backside there. But Weekend has found Fear No Evil that Hurriwind will be able to dash away from, but the up-down just gets a little bit of damage now onto the mid laner. Inbound is locked him in there, and Weekend rejoins this fight. Through comes the Batz, and that's the 4th kill of the game now for Obey Alliance. Eonic is in the fight, but I think he'll be able to get out alive, and great rotation from Obey to charge out their 4th straight kill in this game.
And Hurry is really struggling now in the Xbalanque. Now Snoopy, no flicker, but Weekend completely don't think he's going to be able to do a whole lot at this point. In fact, he has to worry about Screammm's rotation.
Wow, he chunked down Screammmmm, does plenty of damage up to the sky. Goes the Ram, and he'll be able to plug some damage down onto Snoopy, but right there, the Merlin is waiting, so United stem the bleeding just a little bit, get a kill on board, and I will say, despite that most recent kill, I do think Obey has done a better job here in this game of finding the picks and getting out. After what we saw in Game 1, you know, losing a member here, losing a member there, I think that kept eUnited in it a little bit longer, and the gold lead still, in this game, technically in favor of eUnited. But I do think Obey has done a better job, save just that most recent death, of in, out, get the kill, and stay alive.
And it's all been centered around this mid lane, and it really hasn't even been the true 3v3. It's been Hurriwind getting caught a couple times that has really plagued eUnited so far. And a lot of that credit does have to go to Wlfy and how well he has played these mid lane engagements in a 2v1 or a 1v1 where he's just jumping in onto Hurriwind, understanding the damage output potential. But if Hurriwind's going to keep getting jumped on, Screammmmm it just has to be there to insta-kill Wlfy for it. You know, it's a pretty simple adjustment. It feels like here for eUnited. We just haven't seen it quite yet. And that last death actually, I think, goes on to probably the worst member for Obey, because Wowy falling behind in this lane, all this fighting near the mid lane is kind of in the name of propping Wowy up to be a great carry come late game. And setting him behind a little bit, the fact that Snoopy gets that kill as well. If Snoopy starts to get some momentum and starts getting solid farm, if he can poke Wowy out, send him back to base, with this Merlin damage, it's going to be very easy for eUnited to rush Gold Furies. That's a concern now for Obey.
Well, the discrepancy in that long lane is about 2 levels here, as Wlfy will continue his aggression there, and I agree. That's got to be a point of concern here with Snoopy already pulling ahead, a lot of it thanks to that 1 kill he was able to find. Screammmmm actually taken very low here, and you're kind of getting the sense that Weekend maybe playing with a renewed sense of confidence here for good reason. He's 1-0-1. 1 level ahead of Screammmmm. Obey are finding these not only small kills, but small map objectives, and if they're able to keep doing so, they might have a good chance. Unfortunately, Weekend locked in here. Inbound is there to maybe help out his jungler. Stun is down, but the leap right on out from Eonic. Well, at least save the first life in this fight. Screammmmm slams down the anvil of John. Will rejoin the fight and a stun onto Weekend, but a kill onto Screammmmm. Variety has joined the fight from the short lane and gotten a kill. Both junglers down for either team. Hurriwind somehow stays alive here, and Variety might be able to get out alive as well. Wlfy does not have the ultimate and somewhat low on mana here. It's just going to rely on sidesteps for Variety, but no way, I don't think he gets out. But that's a nice dash underground, and Variety stays alive. At the end of the day, it's a 1-for-1 trade.
Yeah, everything's going so much better for Obey. I mean, they play that fight really well. They turn when Screammmmm dunks and finds a big one, and they collapse very well. Ducky keeps everybody else at bay, and then it's just too much gets missed in that engagement. This is not genius level analysis or anything like that. They just missed too many abilities. Ducky misses Fatal Strike, and then the combat dodge onto Hurriwind. He had both chances. Goes 0 for 2 on those to kill him. Variety takes too long to die and ultimately gets a chance to get his ultimate up and his pluck back up. They just miss too many things, and it's situations like this that good SPL teams just don't let you get away with. You don't get many chances to hard win team fights at this point in the game very often, and teams will not give you chances like that again. You know, they don't feel bad for you or anything like that. You have to be able to capitalize when teams make mistakes, and I think that eUnited made some mistakes that fight, but ultimately that was more Obey playing that team fight well, and then they just couldn't capitalize on their own solid positioning and communication and target selection and everything else that was going well for them that fight.
Seems to be kind of the theme, though, right? I mean, with this team, especially if you look at game 1 for Obey, and I mean, it's the conversation we've pretty much had up to this entire point. Good start, but maybe lackluster on the finish, and a fight started here as Scream will Anvil of Dawn down. Wlfy forced to dash away, but Eonic waiting for the kill. Wowy takes to the sky and will be able to barrage down some damage, but awaiting his variety, and the rest of eUnited is Wowy will make his way back by his red buff. Ducky is close by, and Ducky will blink in, find a little bit of a stun. Eonic, the last little bit of tick damage from the stun, will keep one alive. A nice Aegis from Snoopy, avoids the execute and a flicker off to the side. A 3 for 2, and eUnited come out on top.
Ducky still in some trouble, but with that charge prey not landing there for variety, he's going to be able to walk it out. And a good bounce back off by Obey after a great engagement by eUnited. That initiation by Scream was picture perfect. Eonic plays the jump well. Wlfy gets insta-killed, and Wlfy has been the main problem for eUnited so far. They identify that, and they eliminate him instantly. But Wowy buys enough time, is able to take himself out of combat and get some damage off. Ducky that time is nice and accurate in everything that he does. Aegis for Snoopy, can't do anything about that, but is still there and putting in all this damage with this runic shield early on. This adjustment that Soul Laners have made to going a lot more hybrid. They don't build full tank these days. It's a lot of shields, a lot of hybrid damage. I know that the Soul Laners will all say it's because going full tank means that you still die anyway, so I might as well do damage on the way out. But they're certainly doing damage, and Ducky and Variety are both near the very top, and I don't think they're doing a whole lot of damage to one another in lane. This is not a lane that you would expect them to be trading a whole lot of blows. It's not the old, Osiris Achilles or something like that. I feel like this player damage has all been very effective for these two solo laners.
And I think you kind of compare apples to apples across the board. The solo laners have been somewhat even. I think Weekend and Scream have found similar engagements, and might have to see how this Gold Fury will turn those tides. A Fear No Evil sends a couple running, and Obey has taken the Gold Fury away. The River's Rebuke might start off the fight well for them, but instead Hurriwind will send Wlfy to the grave. Wowy has made it a 1-for-1 trade. Obey take away the Gold Fury. eUnited left wondering what the heck just happened.
Man, this has been Weekend's best day in the SPL this year by far. He has just been very, very impactful so far on this Hun Batz. And he gets in there, and while eUnited has great objective DPS between the Merlin and the Xbalanque, it's not good secure. I feel like if I had a nickel for every time I talked about how Merlin has great burn but not great secure, I'd be a millionaire right now. But it's just a fact that so many objectives get stolen away from these Merlins. And I'm pretty sure that was that Fear No Evil coming in, or maybe it was actually Wlfy's Percussive Storm that actually stole that. Wlfy was able to snag it, I think, with that Raijin 1. Wlfy continues to have a really good game on one of his signature picks, but that is 2 fights in a row where he's been focused by eUnited. Now he's got his relics up, so it's going to be a lot easier for him to stand tall in these fights. But Obey and Inbound in particular has to do a good job of keeping him safe, because he is a lot of their relevant damage.
And even if it wasn't the Fear No Evil that secured it, it certainly sent the contesting members of eUnited to the other side of that Fury pit. So Obey Alliance still nursing a 1-kill lead, a bit of a deficit though in the gold, but that's kind of what we've seen, right? I mean, where eUnited have been down in kills, but have still carved themselves out about a 1K gold lead for the majority of this game. And maybe you look at the support discrepancy, Eonic a level ahead and 3 kills on the board. Maybe that's where some of this gold differential comes from, and it's a little bit more even across the board.
I mean, Eonic is pretty big right now at 3-1-3. Probably a few too many kills on the support for eUnited's liking. They'd rather those have gone elsewhere, but their carries aren't hurting for farm either at this point.
Absolutely not.
Despite the early struggles for Hurriwind, he's managed to stay pretty close to even. Snoopy, level 17, has been farming up a storm, but not really farming player damage. He's actually at the very bottom of the player damage charts. Once he gets that Soul Reaver, I expect those numbers to get pumped up pretty quickly, though.
You're saying, just you wait until I rotate to some of these fights. Wlfy, speaking of fight, has been taken down very low. Anvil of Dawn to the sky, looking for the Raijin potentially in the back line, and he finds him. Stun is down, but Obey is there to save their mid laner's life. Fear No Evil sends Eonic in a couple, sending the opposite way. Scream hits the shot, and down goes Wlfy. Hurriwind is there for his second kill of the game. 3 members down from Wowy. Wowy dashing back from beneath his tier 2 tower. Ducky maybe just now getting involved in on this fight. Snoopy suddenly on a killing spree. He said, wait until I join the fight, and look what happens. He's got himself a killing spree here. Ducky, maybe the last one alive, is tanky enough to get out alive, I think. That's a big fight for eUnited.
Man, what a play by Scream. He plays that perfectly, basically from beginning to end. He reads where Wlfy's going to jump, does 1,000,000 damage to him, and then backs up, doesn't overcommit into the Taiko drums. Then he ults, waits for his cooldowns to come back up, and then dunks and doesn't overcommit onto Wlfy, knowing that he doesn't have a real chance to one-shot him from that position. I don't think he had the cooldowns quite back. So he goes himself into the purple buff, finds a wall on 2, and then a raw double tap, and it sets up the cage. That was sick.
Ducky close by. It need to be a miracle steal. Rivers rebuke United, secure the FG, but Wlfy back on respawn has found a kill. Suddenly a double for the Raijin, a triple kill from Wlfy, and 1 kill from Inbound will wipe FG off 4 out of 5 members of eUnited. Scream still's got it, but suddenly this Raijin has picked up 3 more kills. Whoa, Scream could be looking for the dunk down, and he's found 3 stunts. He's gone back in. He might be able to double tap his way out. He has been able to. Wlfy on the chase. And Scream, a bit confident there on his dive, and might just have to give up this tier 1 tower.
Man, I thought that might have been disaster for Obey Alliance after a really great contest. eUnited took too much time getting to Fire Giant, and really are fortunate that they got it at all, because if Obey get that Fire Giant, which they really were pretty favored to do, it felt like that was a pure coin flip on that Fire Giant, then we'd probably be talking about a Phoenix going down on the United side of the map. But Obey, watch out. They're in the lead right now.
Inbound has thrown up the Rivers Rebuke, but this time looking just for a bit of disengage. And it's great for you to point that out, because just moments ago I'm talking about how Obey have had the kill lead, but not necessarily the gold lead. And really for the first time this set, Obey have both. Now they really find themselves in the driver's seat. Inbound has one-upped Eonic, staying somewhat even kills-wise, but does have that extra level on the Yemoja. United will be able to pull back in Oni Fury, but I think the turnaround from Obey, from what we've seen in this game 20 minutes in, is unlike what we saw in Game 1. When we keep drawing comparisons to that game number 1, they've now kind of retaken control of this game, whereas in Game 1, they maybe sort of fell by the wayside.
Oh, they were down 5-6K at this point in game number 1. This is a very, very winnable game for Obey Alliance. 50-50 pretty much at worst. I mean, their composition late game is still very, very strong. I like United's comp late. I mean, Xbalanque Ultimate is so difficult to fight against. Odin Cage doesn't lose a whole lot of effectiveness as the game goes on. Snoopy's only getting stronger on the Merlin, but you've got Raijin who does great late game damage. Ram is a hyper carry come late game. Yemoja isn't getting any worse when it comes to team fighting. I mean, I think that Obey is in a really, really good spot to be able to find their first SPL game win.
They're in a spot now where they just need to continue the trend that we've seen throughout this game. And I like the way you kind of bring up Inbound and this Yemoja. Some more vibes, I think, again, comparing to game number 1. But the Rivers Rebukes, do you call them more on point or maybe more of the same from what you saw early on in game 1?
Yeah, I mean, it's harder in the lane fights to find them at times. It's really the jungle fights where they matter. I thought that the one by fire was important and was really good, but if he does that perfectly, if he actually walls off Fire Giant and makes it so that Wlfy's the only one who can hit it without using an ability, that might have been completely game-changing. That could have gotten Obey that Fire Giant, but that is such a small, he almost did it. It was just a really, really small margin where it doesn't end up happening. I think they've been fine so far, but they, you're really looking at his damage output being higher this game. How well is he going to keep everybody up with those Riptide portals in the healing waters? Those are huge in order to get yourself in a better position in these team fights. The Rivers Rebukes have been good, and he's got better targets to land him on this time. I think locking in the Sobek and locking in the Xbalanque are going to be pretty critical as we go into the late game here.
Well, the ultimate certainly is big, but finding the perfect execution, definitely not easy to do. And I think you bring up the Xbalanque. That's been a good turnaround here from Hurriwind after a rough early game, and has sort of continued here into the mid and into the late game at 2, 5, and 6. But your slash line doesn't care once you start to get some of those big items online. Fully stacked Transcendence into the Executioner. Now we'll have a Rage online as well. I mean, despite how, much trouble he had with Wlfy, Hurriwind is starting to get to that point, now building a little bit more crit to round out his build. This Xbalanque, despite 2, 5, and 6, I think is going to start putting out some good damage. I mean, he's third on the damage charts, right? I mean, it's not that he's been scoffed at. And I think Hurriwind only gets better as these items start to fill out.
Completely agree. It's not like he's been completely ineffective. I think it just feels a little bit more that way because Wlfy has been so impactful on this Raijin, where everything that Obey has done well so far has been centered around what Wlfy's doing on this Raijin. I mean, he's got kill participation on 12 of the 13 kills that Obey has. That's not a coincidence.
And this Fire Giant respawning here. Ducky in the front line, Wlfy hanging back just to the left, kind of protect the president, if you will, if you're Obey. Talk about kill participation. Wlfy's almost got it all, but it's eUnited who are actually positioning themselves a little bit more aggressively around this FG. Sort of note that Weaken is off to the side. Might look for the collapse here. River's Rebuke traps in a couple. Weaken is dropped down. The Fear No Evil, but shrugged off by eUnited. Eonic, a great cage to lock in. Kind of a follow-up. Engage their Scream. Drops on down to the tune of 3 stunned out, and Variety will look to follow up. Nothing to be said. Big engage from both sides, but enough disengage keeps all 10 members left alive.
It feels like Obey kind of went a little bit too ham on the initial engagement. They blow a lot on trying to get these picks with having relics and ultimates up for eUnited. eUnited feel just a little bit more measured in that moment. They only lose beads on Snoopy in a couple ultimates, sure, but you look at Obey Alliance, Weaken loses his beads, and Wowy does as well because that huge dunk coming from Scream. And I like how eUnited's playing it. They're playing it nice and slow, but Obey has this healing coming from Inbound, so they're more than willing to stick around.
Ultimates will be coming up shortly as well. About half on the ones from Obey that are down, and then half to 3/4 for eUnited. The dance looking to continue here. And I'm wondering if it's still going to be Weaken that tries to find those aggressive jumps. I mean, you won't have Blink here for another minute aggro, but it's really been this Batz in Inbound, that 1-2 punch that's trying to start these fights for Obey.
And that's what you expect. Anytime you've got a Batz on your side, he is the one who's either coming in to clean up with that Fear No Evil and getting lots of kills or starting it off.
And Scream can engage on a fight as well, and Anvil of Dawn will drop down onto Wowy, who hasn't taken all that much damage, but it's Wlfy instead who catches a shell, and the shielding might be enough to keep him alive under the duress of Eonic, who does end up falling. Ducky finishes off that kill. The first blood in this fight over to Obey, and eUnited will take that as a sign to disengage. The peel for the mid laner was big in this fight for Obey.
Huge, and that's what we want to see when we see Yemoja. That play right there. Inbound plays that so well, turns and heals Wlfy, keeps him up against all odds. Healing plus shielding is really difficult to deal with. And I think Scream again plays that engagement so well. He waits out the Aegis and then immediately turns his attention towards Wlfy, knowing that he can't use an Aegis while he's up in Taiko drums, but just a little bit short on damage. Was so close.
Leave it to eUnited to still feel confident despite being down a member. Fire Giant taken low, Variety close. Obey have secured the FG, but how about the fight afterwards? Scream knocks down Wlfy. Weaken a backseat as well. Obey starting to crumble under the duress of the 4 eUnited members that are still in this one, but Wowy has turned it around. A double kill of his own. Hurriwind in the mid lane trying to get some action going for himself. Will get rid of Wowy. Ducky low health. 2 members down for eUnited. Eonic might be here for the stun. The ultimate just going to lock Ducky in. 2 members left alive. Make it 1 with the FG. It seems like neither of these teams, aggro, can keep more than 1 member alive with the Fire Giant after the secure.
Yeah, it's not been good for whatever team ends up getting Fire so far, because the other team has really capitalized nicely. Just great work by Scream again on this Thor. He's had just an A+ game on this pick so far, and now we're reaching the promised land for the Xbalanque, where Hurriwind is just doing so much damage it's hard to ignore him. Snoopy does a lot in that engagement as well, finds a big arcane combo that pulls Inbound back in and kind of seals the exit for both Ducky and Wowy. Make sure that they can get Wowy for sure. Wowy was doing great work in that team fight, is backpedaling, putting out a ton of damage to those auto attacks, but ultimately the rest of the damage dealers from eUnited caught up and put him in the dirt.
And eUnited are going to grab themselves a Gold Fury with 3 of the 4 members of Obey just now respawning. That graph is nuts. Talk about how far ahead eUnited were at one point. XP-wise, it's been somewhat even, 3K now for eUnited, but gold up and down throughout this entire game. And it's been Obey that early to mid was kind of in that driver's seat, I think, dictating a lot of pressure. But eUnited, I think, stalled out just enough. Hurriwind starting to get in line. You bring up the Promised Land. And I like what I've seen out of eUnited, where they're not, scared of taking these 4v5 fights, especially when, some of Obey's big team fighting ultimates are down.
It really has opportunities now for eUnited to blow this game wide open, because they've reached a couple big power spike items. Staff of Mirror in there for Snoopy, an item that I love on Merlin because you get to proc it really, really often. It has that internal cooldown, of course, but you always will have Chain Stance up whenever you're ready to use this proc. Gives you a whole bunch more damage. You can double fire 1, which is a whole lot of damage. You can drop down a blizzard, and then when they move out of that, place the next blizzard. There's just a lot of versatility in the Merlin kit already. This adds even more to it, and it's CDR and pen and power. Where's the problem with the Staff of Mirror? And Deathbringer now done for Hurriwind. In Obey Alliance, have a lot of power spike items completed for them as well. Heartseeker for both Ducky and Weekend. But I just feel like their late game is a little bit more contingent on these big ultimates that they have to find.
Weekend is lurking, and I think smart to be kind of tense on throwing down that Fear No Evil, but he has caught Eonic. Wlfy dashes in, and Weekend finishes off the kill. But look at this, 3 members of eUnited have made their way to the right side Phoenix. Can Variety stop the members of Obey Alliance from backing? That's not the goal here. We're going to take a free right side Phoenix. We're going to lose Eonic, but eUnited, they break open the right side of the Obey base.
Just perfect. I mean, no frontliner, you feel like you're not going to be able to get anything going, but clearly not the problem there for eUnited, as now it's Weekend in trouble.
Whoa.
Variety is even teleported behind him and is going to set himself up for a nice kill off of Scream's dunk.
And this could be big aggro. Eonic still 20 seconds left on his respawn, but Weekend has been so much for this Obey team here today. And whereas all the presence felt like it was Obey for the last minute and a half, they technically still had the Fire Giant on Inbound. The map presence was on the left-hand side. It's eUnited who have ripped that away. And I love the rotation there from them. They realize, hey, we might get tower dove beneath this tier 2. We might lose a tier 2. We're going to send enough people through that right lane to get ourselves a big map objective. And now now Obey rather, have to be concerned about these big waves that are starting to form.
It's going to be difficult without Wlfy there, because Wlfy is really the guy who's going to be clearing these waves the most quickly, but you need him in these team fights. You just need him in his damage. Wowy has gotten a lot of player damage as of late. He's really surged towards the top, and now he has his Deathbringer. So just talk about power spike items. Deathbringer for Wowy, Spectral for Ducky, which makes him able to tank Hurriwind so much easier. I mean, you want to talk about a big deal. It's you double dip on getting some health and physical protection, which helps you already, but then a passive that mitigates a lot of this crit damage that's coming through. That's a massive deal for Ducky now. So maybe Obey, with their front line a little bit safer, can start to create some more space at this point.
It is a double Spectral for eUnited, though, as well. Variety has picked one up, as well as the Eonic. So if the goal is to just kind of zone out Wowy, and that might be what it is, eUnited are certainly in a healthy enough spot to do it. Enhanced Fire Giant bursts from the earth as eUnited again position themselves aggressively. Ducky stunned down, might need a little bit more armor in order to stay alive here. Scream, watch out in the backline, is taken to the skies. Wlfy burns both actives from the mid lane. Ducky has found the first kill. Variety the second. Taiko drums rolling through from Wlfy now, and just around the right-hand side goes Variety. Eonic finds the big stun, and Wlfy re-engages here. A 1-for-1 trade continues to be so. Snoopy down in exchange for Eonic.
But Hurriwind is still up with both of his relics, and this is going to be difficult, I think, for Obey, unless they can turn it around. Scream takes too much damage on the hammer in. Weekend going to be able to put him down, but Hurry's branching Bola claims Wlfy.
Wow. I wonder if he thought he might be able just to get the 2-tap there. Variety stays alive. Eonic very low. A 2-for-2 fight. All where we stand, weak and low. You'll have somebody to deal with this right-hand side. But this is, pretty indicative, aggro, I think, of the fights that we've started to see build up in these games. A pick here, a pick there. One team kind of overextends. The other team pushes back. Oh, I got to admit, I'm pretty surprised we haven't seen a massive 5-man sweeping team fight yet, really, from either team with how aggressive they're both willing to be.
Both teams have been pretty consistent in these team fights in finding what they want. I mean, Weekend's been able to get into the back line basically every single team fight and find solid Fear No Evils. He's not been able to find the player damage necessarily, but his impact has certainly been there. The fact that Ducky survives as long as he does, a test with the spectral armor for sure, but that sets up Weekend to get in there and find that kill onto Snoopy, which was huge.
Ducky will be plucked back by Variety as Enhanced Fire Giant has been started by eUnited. Despite both teams being consistent, both teams equally tense to really start up that FG, and I think you probably realize as a team at this point, and I say I'm surprised that there hasn't been a big 5-man sweeping fight. I think both teams realize if you lose one, that's probably just the game.
At this point, absolutely. If a team gets decided here and there's 3 members up on the enemy side, unless it's, Sobek, Odin, and Thor, I don't know. Even that combination probably ends the game. I mean, this is endgame now. You're going to lose if you lose a team fight handily at this point.
What is it, 1 out of 14 million that Doctor Strange
what was it, 16 million? A lot of possibilities here is all we're saying.
Aggro's eyes twitching around trying to figure out the Obey path back into this game. It gets a little bit worse now that eUnited have snuck away the Fire Giant without any duress from Obey. Scream looking for a target, and he goes to the back line, but Wowy is taken to the sky and plugs some good damage over onto Snoopy. Eonic has locked 3 in here, and health bar's starting to melt down a little bit, but Wowy has turned around the damage onto Scream. Ducky looking for an execute, but it's just disengage. A nice pull back in from Snoopy. Might open up the doors to the rest of this fight. eUnited rejoining 4v5, now make it a 3v5. Health bars maybe in favor of eUnited, and Hurriwind agrees. Snoopy, Hurry, both adding some kills. It's suddenly a double for the Xbalanque. Make it 3 for Hurriwind around the stretch. eUnited, they take down 4. You might not need all 5 to end the game.
Yeah, I don't think you will. I think this should do it unless Weekend can make some sort of incredible hero play. It's just that Obey do so well at killing the front line here, but Scream and Eonic are making so much space. It's really, really easy for Hurriwind and Snoopy to just go in and clean up after the fact. Now it's up to Weekend, 1 man against 3, to see if he can keep Obey's dreams alive.
And one of those men is now Hurriwind, who's really come online. I like the idea from Variety, but it won't connect here. Hurry can just attack the Titan, plug damage onto Weekend, dash back to the rest of his team. Decent Fear No Evil, but I don't think it's going to be enough aggro. Titan will fall, and eUnited complete the 2-0.
Man, better for Obey, and I'm sure that the platitudes don't help a whole lot, but as far as a viewer should be concerned, you're just hoping that Obey can continue to improve and find those victories, and we certainly saw the first step of that, which is improvement. I think eUnited didn't look their strongest today. I think that Hurriwind in particular really struggled in the early game on the Xbalanque, but you see this team fight coming together for this team. I thought Scream was really the MVP for them. I thought he kept them in this game when it looked like they might not be able to, and Variety was solid as ever on the Sobek, but United has got to be a little bit concerned. I'm a little bit worried about the consistency of this team right now. Their back line is playing really, really well. I mean, Hurriwind and Snoopy are peeling for each other effectively in these fights. That's usually what that means when you see both backliners 100% HP and their front line's totally dead. It's that they're playing those backline fights well, but I think that the team cohesion still needs to come together a bit for these boys.
Oh, it's better and maybe not just enough from Obey to find their win here today, and better but not consistent enough maybe from eUnited. But eUnited are the ones who do it better here in a 2-game set where eUnited end up on top. And that's it for set number 1, which means we'll go back to Finch to break it down.
Thanks, Tolson and Aggro. Great set there. Unfortunately, Obey couldn't find the win, but congrats to eUnited. One way that you all can win at home is to pick up that Totem Collar Tier 5 Ho Yi skin. Sometimes you need to let your opponents know that you're better than them, and what better way to do that than have a giant hulking behemoth walk into the side of the map and roar death down onto your opposition. That is what this Totem Collar Ho Yi skin will allow you to do. Make sure you're picking it up along with some of the other cool stuff in there by going in to the Grim Moments event, clicking that buy all option, get the exclusive skins, the other unlimited reward skins, and plenty more content. Appreciate you all for sticking with us here at the SPL. I'm here on the desk, joined by Gormizer And Gore, Obey did look better here, but better wasn't enough in this case. eUnited were able to seal the deal.
Yeah, and a lot of it early on was exactly what I wanted to see, right? It's just like, cool, you're still as aggressive, but you're not giving up anything in retaliation. I mean, Wlfy had 3 kills very early on, was I think 3 and 1, had that one death kind of mar him down, but that was really good focus from eUnited. And then the game kind of transitioned, and it became this game of cleanups more than anything else. It was just, cool, we're going to take a huge fight over here, and then you're going to come wipe us, and then 5 minutes later, we'll do the same thing, but opposite, and then 5 minutes later, we'll just see what happens, right? And I think the big turning point in my eyes, it's maybe the Fire Giant where eUnited are able to get the buff and Obey win that fight, but it's actually just shortly after where eUnited recognized like a call, I guess, from Obey, and they push down the right side Phoenix, right? And it's just opening up the base. It caused a lot of response from Obey, where I think they weren't ready to react to the calls Obey or that eUnited were making in response. So they were playing catch up after a certain point, and they never were able to. You know, eUnited was in their full-on sprint, and Obey were just lightly jogging.
You're not wrong with this analogy here, Goremizer. It just feels like Obey are getting to the finish line, but they just can't cross over, right? They're doing a lot of the correct elements, but not all of those correct elements. And the Fire Giant fight you mentioned is one that kind of comes to my mind, right? Where Obey win a fight around FG. They've got just about everyone there. They don't have Wowy. Maybe that's why they hesitate and they don't pull the objective. And by the time they do end up pulling it, eUnited, they say, who cares who actually gets the buff? They storm over them and win the fight pretty handily. It's just Obey getting caught in these weird spots where they're not quite making the correct calls, where they're not securing the objectives. And any really good SPL team, especially one as talented as United, will punish them for it.
Yeah, and I think, honestly, I have to give credit where credit's due, because a lot of the Fire Giant fights ended up in moments like that, right? Wlfy gets a triple kill, or you turn it around, and eUnited is wiping Obey, and that kind of went back and forth. But you don't get to that point if you're eUnited if it's not for Scream early on. Actually, some of the highlights reminded me. I have the note over here, but I mean, single-handedly, these Anvil of Dawns, there were 2 times early on where he gives up his own life, he dives in with the ult, but then eUnited are just able to come through and dunk down the rest of Obey. I mean, it is a clean sweep after that. And it was those moments that fought eUnited back into the game and kind of slipped up and tested Obey more than anything. And unfortunately for Obey, the test continued from that portion on. They weren't prepared for it. They didn't study enough. And, well, eUnited take the win.
And they improved to 2-2. That's good enough for 5th place. Obey dropped down to 0-4. But I don't think that quite tells the story of a team that has improved each week. I doubt that Obey are going to end this without finding some success at some point. The squad has looked better every time we've seen them. Here's the schedule, though. We just finished the eUnited Obey set. Sanguine and Renegades are the next match that's coming up. And really, just look at the rest of this week. The Knights rival, SSG and Radiance. It is hard to call. Those are all toss-ups in my mind the whole rest of the week here now, Goremizer. I mean, the SPL is just too competitive, and the team in 8th, I just said, is getting better every time we see them. I think that the SPL right now, you cannot afford to count anybody out.
My eyes are on these teams, you know, like Obey or some of the other teams that have either had some role swaps or something fresh coming into Season 7, where they're just trying to get that teamwork and meld it together, right? They're still getting there, if in some cases. In other cases, you know, you're starting to see Rival shape up into what we expected out of them. So I'm anticipating a big sweep. It's really competitive now. But imagine in 3 weeks when the teams that are maybe falling just slightly behind the others are at the level they wanted to be at the very beginning of the split. There's still so much room for improvement for some of these guys. It's literally only uphill from here.
Yeah, and no one's playing perfect, but it's easier to go from 60% to 80% than from 90 to 95%, right? I think that the room for growth that's there for some of these bottom-end teams is a little bit easier to attain than what's still yet to be seen from some of those top squads. But speaking of some of the best, my man Hurriwind is standing by for an interview. Let's hear some of his thoughts.
Thank you, Finch. Hurriwind is here with me, mid laner for eUnited, the man who goes 2 for 2 on mid lane hunters here today. And I am curious, kind of from a big picture perspective from you guys. You guys are now 2-2 here in the SPL, and I think you've played some teams that a lot of people would consider all the way at the top, some teams a little bit lower down. Where do you guys kind of see yourself now, 2-2 up to this point? Have you seen an improvement from previous weeks up to this point here today?
Yeah, I think we definitely ran into a bit of a rough streak ultimately, but I still consider us to be a team that should be on top. We should be in a running for the best. Last week was rough for us, and we had a couple rough weeks of practice, but I think this is a good stepping stone for us to get where we need to be. We expect ourselves to be.
I agree, and I think good vibes coming here out of this game, 2-0 for you guys. I am curious, though, what's kind of the team's mindset, and maybe even your mindset there in game number 2? Obey start off hot, Wlfy gets a few kills under his belt. In the mid lane, obviously some jungle focus, gank focus, really on you. What's the team mindset and maybe your mindset to kind of leveling things out, staying into that game to the point where you get to the late game?
Yeah, well, I started off the game 0-4, but my mental was as strong as ever. I don't know. I just feel really confident when I think we're significantly better than the team we're playing against. And even though we made like a lot of mistakes, and I personally made a lot of mistakes, I never felt like we were in a position to lose that game. And you could just kind of feel that in the team morale as well. Like no one was ever feeling like the game was out of our own hands.
Yeah. Well, you love to hear that, and I don't want to look too far ahead, but next week, first matchup up against Sanguine. Quick thoughts on those guys. How you feeling going into your matchup next week?
I actually have a lot of respect for that team. I think some people are surprised. Some people aren't. I'm personally not surprised to see them doing so well. I think they're going to be a tough matchup. I think they have a specific way they play, and I think that we can easily prepare to beat them and look like a better team than them come next week. But we're definitely going to have to use the next few days or so to prepare for that. They're definitely a strong team.
Well, confidence is key, and you guys certainly have it, and for good reason. Hurriwind, congrats on the 2-0 here today. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, Sanguine up against the Renegades.
Thanks, Wilson.